Welcome back, everyone, to Merge Conflict, your weekly developer podcast, talking about all things in the world of software development. Frank, happy holidays. It is officially December on the podcast.
Is it winter? Are we a winter podcast now? Yeah, it's it's
Snowing.
after no snow here, thankfully, but we ate a lot of turkey, and that does usually signify the changing of the time. So
Mm-hmm.
snow will come, usually in February.
Yep. We already, today's Black Friday, we already took down all of the holiday Thanksgiving decorations, which was only for, I have a strand of orange lights, and those are good for
Mm,
Halloween and
sure.
Thanksgiving because they're orange. They're like dual purpose.
Yeah. They're permanently orange? You bought orange lights?
One color,
Isn't this a test for
orange.
psychopaths?
Just one color, orange, and that's it. I think it was, we were at Home Depot, and it was after Halloween, not yet
Yeah,
Thanksgiving, and they're like, we got to get rid of these, and it's like a 50-foot strand, and it
I
was
love
like
it.
$5 or something. I was like,
The
okay,
only people in the neighborhood with orange lights. I
we're
love
the
it.
only ones. So those come down today. We put up the Christmas tree. Christmas tree's
Uh,
up, and then
nice.
we replace the orange lights with white lights that are all but also multicolor, so they fade in. They have multiple controls.
Fancy.
Nothing technologically advanced, but just normal holiday lights. Frank.
I like the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I think I got that right. Um, so you go with the classy, warm, all white lights, winter wonderland, I like to call it, one side. And then the other side, you do
Mm,
whatever, National Lampoon's Christmas, as many
yeah,
blinky, colorful lights as you possibly can with blow up Santas jiggling around. I like the good contrast,
yeah.
have it all. Why not?
We were at Costco, and they have a huge bluey blow up and I was like, oh, do we need this? I was like, it's so
Yes, you do.
expensive. Like, where, some people have like the blow up things like every kitchen. Like, where are you storing all this stuff? I don't understand. It's like,
Who's
man.
paying the power bill? Those things have fans running all the time.
I know, right? Yeah. um well, let's get into it. We already did our big .NET 9 unveil podcast. We were gone for a week, so I had a nice little podcast with John Galloway, which was a delightful little treat for folks. And today, what I want to talk about is it's been several weeks, and I've actually only really had like 2 days with my MacBook, my Mac Mini here. So what I wanted to do today was talk about like the fresh developer setup, clean
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
pros and cons of the Mac and the Mac Mini in our year, basically 2025. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of
Close
people right
enough.
now. Like, I was on Amazon, and in the tech category, the number 6 selling item was the Mac Mini.
For good reason.
Yeah, it was probably the
Yeah,
base
we haven't been
model, but
bashful.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's great.
Well,
Uh,
$600 for a computer. Yeah, let's not be bashful. This is
yeah,
good price point.
that's a great price point. I okay, so let's talk first on ports and devices. Let's do a little Mac Mini. It's been a few weeks. How do we just feel about the unit in general? I'll let you start, Frank.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of ports, plenty of ports. I've been fine there, but just as we anticipated, James, we shouldn't do a podcast about technology because we're always right. We are always right. The dongle situation has not improved. Situation report, dongles are bad.
Yeah.
I have yet to spend the big dollars for the Grand Thunderbolt port. I believe that actually will correct a lot of my problems. But I am sad to report that all the problems I had with my terrible dongles on my laptop continue to persist with the computer. Go figure. Cheap dongles be cheap dongles. So I think even with the port setup, it only has, for example, one HDMI port. So if you want dual monitor, you're going to need a dongle. And if you want dual monitor, like the simplest way is get like a Thunderbolt, which would have actually two HDMI ports. I don't know what you do with the port on the back. I guess you can mix them up. But I think overall, I've been happy with the number of ports. That's fine. But I am looking to do like dual monitor and things like that. There's only one HDMI, so I'm back in the dongle business. And look, there's just no USB-A ports.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of USB-A devices left out there. I have 30, I believe I'm counting. It's gone up since the last time I counted on the podcast, but you're going to need a dongle. So ports are actually fine with the exception of it would have been nice to have 4 USB-A ports on the back. But I'm fine with it, but I do need to buy a dongle.
Yeah, I think so there's been a few things here that I have. So yeah, there's 3 on the back, 2 on the front. My back ports are currently what are they?
How many free ports in the back, James? Be honest. Be honest. He's checking everyone.
3 Thunderbolt ports. Okay, so I did buy a USB-C to USB-A adapter. So I have a dongle. So I do have one dongle set up.
Yeah.
And that's out the back. And that is because I need that for like my Stream Deck, for example. And also the microphone is plugged into that as well.
Okay.
And then also my Logitech mouse. I could use Bluetooth, but I just plugged in the dongle, so it's there.
Interesting.
I do have the fancy Apple keyboard.
Look at you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Bought the black keyboard.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was an extra $20 for black. So
God, stupid. That's how they get you.
Oh, yeah. They're like, yeah, do you want? It's like, yeah, just I'll give it to me.
I do.
And then,
sorry, not to interrupt. I do want to report one sad side about the HDMI. I have many little screens because I love to do like IoT stuff. I like to make little electronics and things. For whatever reason, the HDMI port on the Mac Mini cannot drive funny, weird displays like this.
Oh.
They work fine over like adapters and things like that. Oh. So it's just a little bit funny. Probably like an HDMI 2 versus HDMI 1 thing. Maybe a cable issue. It can be so many things. That's why debugging HDMI is so hard. So sorry to interrupt, but I did want to add like not everything's perfect in Portland.
It's definitely not, because this monitor that I have here, which is this LG ultra wide that I'm on currently, it's not just the ports that are on your Mac, it's also the ports that are on your devices, like you're saying. So this specific monitor can only do HDMI at 60 hertz.
Right.
But it has a display port which can do up to 100 hertz, not 120.
Cool.
100, just 100. Get you 100. And so that means I needed to go buy a Thunderbolt 4 or 5, whatever, Thunderbolt 4 to display port cable. So I'm wasting one of those. So now my little HDMI is empty, and it makes me sad. Obviously there are some monitors that support HDMI 120, 240. The device, the Mac Mini supports it, but my monitor doesn't, right? So like that became like
that annoying incompatibility. Like incompatibilities from the 90s. Not so bad because you're still at least getting 60, so it's usable. Yeah. But you're just not getting the full capabilities of the monitor. That stinks.
Yeah. So now I got the cable. It's in there. So all the back cables are gone, there. I did see some cool speed tests where someone actually did find a Thunderbolt 4 external SSD drive, and like the speeds are crazy but you could totally get it. It's real expensive, but that's really cool.
I run a Thunderbolt 3 and NVMe external drive, and Thunderbolt's always been good. That's never been its issue. It's just been expensive.
I have one of these. So I have one of these little adapters. This came with one of my original Pixel devices. People can see that. It's like
James is showing the tiniest little dongle you've ever seen. It looks like it perhaps takes an SD card. Who knows?
Yes. No, so it's a USB-C to USB-A, right? So like normally,
oh Lord, it's the worst dongle in the world.
So normally you have one of these, right? USB-C to USB-A dongles, because out the front you just want like a little dongle to be able to plug stuff in. So I have, instead of one of these long ones sticking out the front, I just have a short one out the front, which is kind of cool.
No animal's gonna walk by that and break it off.
Exactly. That's true. I don't have any cats, so we're good. Hopefully Millie's not jumping up here. I would say, like I do want you to 3D print me like a little power button thingy out the back. I don't
The power
turn.
button is ridiculous. I haven't had to touch it much slash at
No.
all. But
Yeah.
my God, it's
It's
ridiculous.
silly.
Apple, come on.
Yeah. Because I really don't want to like touch the device all that much in general once it's set up and it's good. You do have to get in there and do so. So like when we left on holiday for like 2 weeks, I did turn it off. Like I'm just like, I'm going to turn
Okay.
it off and like, well, you got to press it and turn it on back and forth. I don't know. The device is super cute, right? It totally works. The everything that I plugged into it, all the things I've done, have been really good. I've thrown a bunch of stuff at it today where I was doing a recording. I had VMware with Windows 11 set up. I had Visual Studio in there. I had VS Code running. I had all the things running. It didn't even purr, right? So like
Yeah.
from from like specs, this that the setup could have been, was super easy. And I sent you a photo. What I did is I ripped everything off my desk. Everything's off my desk. Ripped it
Gorgeous.
all apart. Every
Start from zero.
start from every cable. I just ripped every, and then I was like, I don't know what these cables go to. So then they went into the
I love that.
box of cables that will
Hmm.
go nowhere at some point. Ripped them all out, reset up everything, and yeah. So on my desk, I just have my audio equipment, Mac Mini, and then my Project Volterra, boop 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 boop, set up really pretty right here, which is cool. I'm gonna get like a new desk mount thing from Grove Made, which will look really nice. On here. But yeah, I think in general, like the device is really nice from a high level. Good. I'd say my biggest struggle with it is not the hardware or the ports. To me, it's actually the software I'm struggling
Oh
with
boy. Okay. Well,
um, as a
we can easily
desktop.
spend the rest of the podcast talking about James's use of Mac OS. But
I
I do want to comment on performance because we
mhm.
raved about the performance when we had very little experience with it. So I do want to say I'm very happy with the performance with it. I got the fans roaring on day one. Of course you have to. It's a new
Yeah.
computer. Of course, I transcoded some video, and the video was transcoding at 100 frames per second using every little CPU on this little guy. And I was very pleased because even that felt slow, so I couldn't imagine what it'd be like on a slower one. I had a really strange experience training neural networks on it. So the GPUs are on Apple devices, you program them with the Metal API. And for doing neural networks, Apple wants you using Metal Performance Shaders. It's called MPS. And so when you use, sorry, I'm working my way up the stack as I'm describing
No,
this
yeah, you're
problem.
good.
When we get to PyTorch is the library you use to actually like train neural networks and use, all that stuff. You can run the MPS version of it. So I was very excited
Yeah.
to do that. I got a new computer. I bought all the GPU cores. I spent $200 more to get all the GPU cores, and I got MPS running with it. And I was very happy. PyTorch
Yeah.
running. Everyone, nice. Life is good. Until I use this one PyTorch operation, and it reports back an error message. So sorry, that operation is not supported with MPS.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, well, sad cakes. But like, I made it this far. It's fine. Like, I have my Linux actual neural network machine. This is just my dev setup and everything. But it'd be nice if my dev setup was perfect. So, just on a whim, this is pretty easy in PyTorch. I switched the compute engine from MPS to CPU, which is
Oh.
not something you generally want to do because
No.
GPU fast, CPU also fast, but slow in
Yeah.
other ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
James, I'm
Yeah.
not.
One's good at math. One's better at math.
Yeah. um 10x speed improvement. It
Wow.
went 10 times faster. So not only did the CPU work, it was 10 times faster than their GPU implementation of the
Wow.
same operations. So I don't know which I want to compliment how fast the CPU is, and also get that MPS implementation improved, please, because the CPU should not be faster at neural networks than the GPU, but the CPU is that fast. So ridiculously, the CPU on this thing can't outperform my 3090, but it's putting up a good fight. It's up there. So I want to compliment the CPU and beg Apple to improve their MPS implementation for PyTorch.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, I totally agree. I've not really had the device hiccup at all or have any real issues. Again, when I was running, Xcode and Android Studio and Visual Studio Code and VMware with Windows and compiling and doing stuff, it all seemed really good. And right now, for example, like, I have Edge where I have a bunch of tabs open on multiple tabs, multiple sessions. I don't really have a lot else open right now. I have the Mail app and iMessage
Mm-hmm.
and, passwords or whatever open. So some apps open, but like right now I open Activity Monitor and it's at 5% of the CPU, right?
Yeah.
5% for system, 5% for user. So 10% total and just doing normal stuff. So it's like I could 10x do tons of stuff, right? I'd
Easily.
say this though. I think that, this device is very powerful and the M4 is very powerful, but I feel like Mac OS, it like is having a hard time keeping up with some things. Like for example,
Mm.
if on Activity Monitor is a good example. So if you open Activity Monitor fresh, right, do a force quit out of it, don't have it
Okay.
there, and
Roger.
open it up, it sits blank. It's
It needs to
eight
register itself
seconds.
with the 8 seconds. Oh,
Yeah,
I think your
I'm.
activity monitor's broke.
At least 8 to 10 seconds. It's just sitting there empty, right? After that, it's
No, I
fine. But
believe it's less than 1 second on my machine, sir.
yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? So
Interesting. Okay.
I've noticed like kind of small little hiccups like that, where it's like,
Hmm.
oh, like that. We have the same machine,
Strange. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Pretty
but
much. Yep.
yeah, if I close it right and I reopen it again, it's like straight up. But it's like when I do a full quit out, force exit,
Interesting.
blah blah blah. I'm just like,
Yeah.
all right, fascinating, And I've noticed that, and I've noticed some weird quirks, right? Like just quirks with some of the newer apps, right? Like I would say, I feel like I didn't experience these quirks on my MacBook Air for some reason, and I don't know if it's because how their monitors, their devices, the scaling, the resolution, like I think it
Right.
all works better. Here, for example, this is my first Mac on a desktop, right? And I very rarely have ever really plugged even my MacBook Air into a monitor. But I do feel like this new Mac catalystification for like some of these native apps, like I'm not
Not
like the
great.
settings menu, I'm not really feeling it. Like it's really hard to find things. Um
Think we all miss
and
the old settings app, honestly.
yeah, and even in displays, like, maybe I'm just spoiled by Windows. Like there's just a scale setting. It's like, hey, do you want to scale it 125%? And it just like scales all this stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
here, it's like, I guess I would, if I want to 2x it, I like cut down my resolution. I'm like, well, that feels weird. And then like, not, it's like kind of odd. So it's like, I spent a lot of time, more than I thought I would, actually going into a lot of accessibility features. And in
Yeah.
accessibility features, you can really like adjust like the display, the text, the font sizes. So I'm
Mm.
like I'm making everything bigger. I'm on like nearly 4K monitor, right? But I need things to be bigger. Like, and there's not just like there is kind of a make things big mode, but I've been
Yeah.
really going in and trying to fine tune these things. So I do feel like I have a lot of real estate, and I feel like everything's tiny
Yeah.
and hard. And again, maybe that's a me problem, not really using a lot of Mac OS, but I've never had that problem on any laptop device from them because I think the scaling inherently works a lot better.
That is interesting, the difference between an Apple laptop versus the desktop, because on the laptop, I think they default to more of a scaling-based UI.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they know the resolution of the screen, they're controlling that very carefully and all that. But in the desktop world, you can literally plug some ridiculous
Little
widescreen
tiny thing.
device
And yeah.
into it, and it has to adapt to it, and so they present a different UI where they actually present the resolution. It's
Yeah.
interesting because I've never seen it from your perspective. I know the Windows way. I used to hate the Windows way because you had to reboot the operating system whenever you changed to the font scale mode, but they finally did fix that.
I did.
Um, so there's always been pros and cons with this kind of stuff. It is. I never thought about that though. You're right. The UI literally changes between the laptops and the desktops, where the default is small text, bigger text, large text. They have like those default icons. So if none of those are comfortable, then you're in James's camp and you have to go to every nitty gritty setting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one seems like a little pet peeve. Can I tell you my own little pet peeve?
Yeah. 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 I love it. Yeah. Go for it.
I always forget this with new Mac operating systems, but I'm one of those people that uses the cursor keys in my code to move
Mm.
around. You
No.
know,
Yeah.
I press the arrows and I wait for the little guy to take the cursor and scroll the screen and all that.
Yeah.
I played Nintendo when I was a kid. I'm pretty dang good with some cursor keys. And I want a fast response time. I played the games where
Mm.
you have to hit the button really fast. And my God, James. So you can go to the keyboard settings and you can change the key repeat rate, right? So
Oh,
this
okay.
is how quickly do keys repeat if you just hold down the button. There's another
Yes.
setting, which is the key repeat delay, which is how long to wait until it starts that repeat behavior.
Yep.
The default UI in Mac, I always set the keyboard repeat rate to maximum,
Mm.
and it is slow. I don't know who it was designed for. I don't know what maximum they think that
Yeah.
is. But I literally daydream just trying to move just a few characters at a time. So I just want to put this out there as a PSA. Longtime Mac users will know these little tricks. But there's this concept. This is kind of like the Mac's version of the registry, but they're called user defaults.
Mm.
And you can change user defaults. You can change user defaults for things that don't have UIs. You can change user defaults for things that have UIs that are bad UIs, in that the slider does not go far enough to the right. So when you drag that slider all the way to the right to get key repeat 10, not fast enough. Not nearly
20.
fast enough. We're trying to live, man. We got things to do in this world. So you can set user defaults and you can set that number high. I recommend setting it very high
Yeah.
because you know
That's
what?
cool.
Computing is video gaming and you need that cursor to move. So I keep a good delay on there so I don't accidentally trigger it. But please go look up. I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can Google this stuff pretty easily. Set your key repeat high and thank me later. It feels more like a video game.
It doesn't adjust to fast, so it definitely I at least changed it to the highest setting there.
Yeah.
On there, yeah, there is like a bajillion settings. I also feel like the management of, and this is a Mac OS thing, not a Mac Mini thing, but definitely the management of. I think because here I'm really using this, I'm full fledged in on like developer mode, right? And video.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm on my Mac Mini. I do developer-y stuff, but it's like less weight, right? It's like I'm probably only focusing on .NET MAUI development, and like that's kind of it. Like here, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be podcasting. I'm going to be recording videos. I'm going to be editing
Right.
videos. I'm going to be in Windows and over here, and I need my terminal setup. I need all this stuff, right? Like I want all the nice things to be there. So when you install all this stuff and use it as like, here's my main machine, right? Like in fact, I've converted. I want Apple Intelligence everywhere, so I have every email account. You saw me
Yeah.
downloading 120,000 emails. I cleaned out all my inboxes. I archived everything. So
Did you?
everything's clean
Okay.
now.
Nice. Nice.
And I have all my email accounts in my email, just like there. And I am like, okay, like, this is all gonna kind of work
Show me
out.
magic.
But there's like a bajillion different, security settings, and this thing, I don't even know where they're at. Like they're weird names, like, especially when you are using development stuff or OBS, like, or Camtasia, it's like it needs 5 different permissions, it needs that thing, and accessibility. It's like all these
They're
wacky settings. And you're just like, I feel here's my, and then I want to get into developer mode and setup, but here's my base
Mhm.
level here. I really feel like Mac OS from a high level, again, this is like first take. And again, I've been a Windows person for my entire life, and I still am a Windows person. But I do feel like many teams at Microsoft have really tried to in like really make the development experience really awesome from the jump, like built what's in the box, right? So for
Mhm.
example, Windows terminal, amazing. Mac terminal, terrible, right? Like
No.
I yeah, it's
I'll
like
fight you.
terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, I installed iTerm too, because even Oh My Posh is like, don't use the Apple terminal. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll use something else. And then it's like, you know, Windows has WinGet built in. I got to install Homebrew and I got to do like all this other stuff.
Ugh,
And it's like,
that's the worst
again,
part of
these
Mac.
are these are all the things that are there, right? It's like, oh, there's no power toys, which have like 1,000. Like, again, it's these small things, but they
Mm-hmm.
do kind of add up at the end of the day. So I felt like I spent most of the time I spent most of my time getting this machine into a state that was more me tweaking settings
Yeah.
than actually just like, okay, I'm ready to code now. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's bad. It's like still fun, but I want everything else seems simplified from like a consumer perspective, but it doesn't feel like, it's like, hey, we got Xcode, good enough, right? It's like, oh, wait, what about the entire dev sort of experience? You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe because I'm not a command line person and I want more things to be sort of
Yeah.
nicer, I guess. I don't know. That's just me.
Well, Microsoft didn't make sysinternals. Sysinternals made sysinternals. And Microsoft was smart enough to buy them and bring them in, So, like, there's some beautiful tools in Windows that Microsoft didn't make, that Windows people just rely on. And so
Yeah.
that ecosystem has just matured over time. And I think, yeah, anytime you're switching between operating systems, you're going to always have this terrible
Yeah.
friction. And you should see me on Linux. I'm changing every setting on Linux.
Yeah.
I mean, starting with the scroll direction, because Apple brainwashed me into changing my scroll direction on mice.
Yeah.
So, like from little things like that to big things of which window becomes active when you click on the app versus, the Windows policy on Windows management is different than Mac.
Yeah.
And people will say it's bad or worse. And I'm like, no, it's different. Honestly, there's pros
Yeah.
and cons to both.
Yeah.
And you'll run into all of those. For instance, on Windows, it's much easier to get 2 instances of an app up and running. Mac, they really just want you having 1 instance of every app running. Subtle things like that kind of drive people switching between the operating systems. And I switch between the operating systems. It drives us a little batty because you
Yeah.
forget which operating system you're in and which behavior it's going to do. Other things like Power Toys, like you just haven't realized yet that there's the Xcode additional tools download. And oh my God, there are some amazing additional tools in the Xcode additional tools download. So if you're a developer, make sure you go to your developer downloads and go check out what's there, because Apple does release lots of fun little power tools with
Nice.
UIs. Other things are, yeah, they're Unixy, so there's always all the command line Unix stuff. But then there's Activity Monitor, which has more power than anyone basically realizes. And then there's Xcode Instruments, which is literally 1970s AI that can do anything, monitor anything on that computer and create reports about it.
Yeah.
And it's amazingly powerful. But there's no equivalent to that tool on Windows. So you're not looking for that tool, you're not thinking about that tool. You kind of have to come into it and see, oh, this tool is powerful in a way I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Anyway, these are all just the normal frictions you run into when you're bouncing operating systems.
It totally is. And like, I think if we have the same conversation in a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, it'll be very different, right? Like, and even
Yeah.
me getting stuff set up and me like recording my first video from recording my second video, like my second run on it with OBS and the setup, like it was a lot smoother, right? Because I'm starting to learn the keyboard commands and just the
Yeah,
tweaks
that's
of
one.
what it looks like to be in and out of these different things, right? So like, and then even me, right? I'm a PowerShell person, so I was like, okay, I got PowerShell, and I'm usually like, I don't really customize it out of the box. Like now I'm learning, oh, there's like scripts that get run and like this thing and that thing, and now I have my Posh and like this other stuff. So like it's stuff that I
Mhm.
usually don't really need because I'm not really a terminal person, but I'm like, okay, I kind of feel like I want to get a little bit more ingrained and like obviously use VS Code and things like that and Xcode and Android Studio. But I was like, let me see if I can take some of the things that I like from Windows and how do I bring some of that stuff into the Mac and how does that look like? Obviously they're not the same, like you're saying, but yeah, there's going to be
Mhm.
some friction points here and there. But I kind of expected that, because I do think a lot of my, MacBook Air, I never went down that path of really saying, okay, I'm going to really
Yeah.
go all in,
Use it.
right? I don't really use it. So I'm actually using this. So when you start to use stuff, then it is really different.
Yeah.
Which gets me to the point here where I want to talk about the developer setup 30 minutes in, because I do think that all the stuff we just talked about is all super valid. Just from like your perspective, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, this is a great machine, I'm going to buy this. They could be running into a lot of things that I'm running into, or like you're saying, like, hey, they're already, doing crazy machine learning things, whatever, and then they're running into,
Mhm.
different quirks and seeing how powerful it is and making it purr, right? So for me, at least on my dev setup, I made a video about setting up everything on a Mac with VS Code, in general, right? So whether you use like, Rider or use VS Code,
Yeah.
kind of your options for .NET development. But I still think having obviously Xcode, you need it anyways. And then Android Studio, we talked about that setup before. I use Xcodes to manage my Xcode setup and my installs. Got my Android Studio to manage my SDKs and my emulators, which are fun and not fun. And
Can
then
I
I've just
interrupt
been,
there?
what's that? Go ahead. Yeah.
Because we did the podcast talking about new machine setups, and so
Yeah.
I was all primed. I was ready to tackle the Android problem. Oh boy, that thing beat me up hard. I came out black and blue by the end. In the end, I did end up also having to get Android Studio and just doing it that way because I don't know if I'm just stupid or I'm bad at paths or what the deal is, but I failed at my Android setup for the longest time, and that was easily my hardest part. I didn't want to interrupt you, but once you said Android Studio, I just had to chime in and be like, I tried, everyone. I tried so hard. In the end, I downloaded Android
Yeah.
Studio.
It's way easier. Like you do have to kind of like, the nice part is that when you open like an Android or Maui application, it runs this stuff and it's going to tell you all the things that you're missing, because when you install
Mm.
Android Studio, it installs like sometimes the latest, but sometimes not the latest, and like not all the things that Maui
And
needs.
sometimes partially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like you need, like right now, for example, you need SDK 15 and you need build tools 15, but you also need to know to go in to like the SDK, like you need to know to go into that, but also show package details, which means you're going to also need like command line tools, but like version 12 for some reason, and not the latest 16, because that's not what Maui uses. You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
and like it's going to tell you, you
Yeah.
just need to know where to look.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it told me, and I was like, I'm a professional computer user hacker dude. I'm
Yeah.
just going to install the Android because it's just a bunch of zip files.
Yeah.
FYI, Android SDKs are just a bunch of zip files. I'm just going to
Accurate.
go download the zip files and put them in the right place. Turns out I have no idea where the right place is.
Yeah. Then, and it needs to be in a specific place. You need specific Javas. Like it, the documentation's good, and there's just new stuff that's in the box that I think helps out. But I'm just like, yeah, I'm just gonna install Android Studio. It just makes it way better, way easier to do.
I'm sorry. So I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's still our recommendation. Just you don't want to, just do it.
Totally, just do it. And then yeah, I've just been rocking VS Code, all my normal stuff. I will say this: I think you did too. You are you using VMware Fusion for your Windows?
I am. I was a little disappointed. It turned out, and I might have, I might have said the wrong thing on the podcast. You cannot run your x86, as far as I can tell, images on an ARM Mac, or at least with VMware Fusion, the current version I'm using. That was a little sad because I had a beautiful Windows 10, 11 dev machine all set up in VM.
Oh,
So what I ended up doing, because I do like to keep a Windows machine around, I set up a new Windows 11 virtual machine to have all to myself, which honestly isn't the worst thing because I didn't have the most data on that machine. So it's always fun to have a fresh Mac machine and then get a fresh Windows machine at the
yeah.
same time. It just feels good to start from scratch like that.
Yeah, and it makes VMware Fusion Pro. You do have to sign up for an account on Broadcom, but like once you get the download and you get the stuff, it's really easy to set up everything. It's like it literally just acquires the ISO from
Yeah.
Microsoft, runs you through the install. Like it is
And I'm a
seamless.
dummy. I went and down because I'm old, I went and got the ISO
Oh,
myself. I
wow.
went and got my product key. I didn't realize that they just automate all that stuff now. It's amazing.
All streamlined, yeah. And yeah, I got my product key. I use my employee discount on an official
Nice.
key, which is cool. I did run into one quirk though. So if people run into
Mm.
this, is that, and maybe you did too, how you solved it. But when you create your image, it only allows you to select 64 gigs as the hard drive. base image.
Oh, okay, sure. That's at the configuration time, but I'm used to VMware Fusion where I can just expand the hard drive later if I want to.
Yes. So that is what I did today. And I said, okay, I booted it up. And once you install Visual Studio, that 64 gigs is
Oh yeah,
gone.
gone.
It's gone. And it's like,
Hi, Visual Studio. You ate.
I, I got the pop up in Windows after I created my first project. It's like, and you're running out of space. Please do something now.
FYI, you did select every workload in Visual Studio, probably.
No,
No,
only
I
two.
think. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
ASP.NET Core and Maui. Those are the only two, but the Maui one, it's got all the
It's
extra
huge.
bits in it. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
And right now, the latest Visual Studio, I think, is installing both .NET 8 and .NET 9 in the workload. So I think it's like
It did
double.
on mine too. Yeah, very interesting. Weird state we're in.
Yeah. Which I think is okay because my whole video that I'm putting out this week is like upgrading from .NET 8 to .NET 9. So I was like, cool, I need all of them anyways. So the one thing is that, yeah, when you go into your VMware Fusion, you go into your virtual machine, you go into your settings, and there's two things that I figured out. Okay, so first, one, you definitely need to install. There's an option under, I don't know, where is it at?
Virtual machine, I believe it is.
Is it under the, there's under virtual machine, there's an option called install VMware tools. This is a very
Yeah,
important setting.
very important.
It's the most important setting because if you don't, it just defaults to 1024 by 768 and you can't resize the window and it's super upsetting. And almost like I Googled for
You
like an
didn't
hour. I
know
was like,
this. I'm so sorry, brother. I should have
I'm like,
warned you.
how do I do this?
This is
So you got it.
VMware Fusion 101. Yeah, otherwise you're using the Windows default drivers because it broadcasts itself as basically a generic graphics card.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. But once you install the drivers, everything's wonderful.
I did a bunch of Googling and YouTubing around and someone's like, oh, just install remote desktop and remote desktop to it. And then like, what? No, install the, and then, so I mean, I used to use VMware Fusion all the time. And like
Okay.
once I saw the help article, it's like install I was like,
Yeah.
of course you install the
Oh my
tools,
God.
you idiot. Yeah. It's like, so once I got that, it was good. Now, then what I did is I went into the hard drives and there's just a slider. The slider only goes up. It does not go down. So I went and I was like, okay, let me increase this puppy to 100 gigs. That should be good enough from 64. I can always increase it. Yeah. Now, the funky thing is that when you go into Windows, it's going to show up that new, let's say that's an extra 38 gigs. It's going to show up unallocated.
Yeah.
So you could just add it as another drive, but you just want to expand the original drive. The problem I ran into is that it wouldn't let me because Disk Manager was like, oh, you have a recovery partition set up for this, which is like the default. So there is a help article and there's a 25 step process that basically goes into disk manager tools, like command line mode.
Yeah.
You have to like select partition 4, you have to give it, assign it a drive, and then you have to like manually like try to delete it and it won't let me delete it. So you have to brute force delete it. Once you delete that, and then it allowed me to expand it. So
wow.
like, yeah. Did you run into any of those issues or was it just fine for you?
Well, I just kept unchecking Visual Studio options until it fit on my hard drive reasonably. Sir, you can unselect things, in the installer.
Very
so
true.
I haven't actually had to move that slider, but no, I don't. I've moved sliders before in other virtual machines, and I don't ever remember going through that process. So weird. Maybe it's a first time thing. It sounds like a partitioning issue thing. Who partitioned your machine?
I don't know.
I'll
find you the help article. That is for sure. It's like I spent a lot of time.
I do know that is common when you expand the drive space that it becomes unallocated, but usually the Windows Disk Manager can just merge it on up with the partition next to it. That's usually not a big operation for it to do. Not a big deal.
You would think. Yes. However, I spent many a moons figuring this out, and specifically, so.
Well, I don't want to make this a dig on VMware Fusion because honestly, I think they do a good job. So it's fun to be able to run this stuff. But I do have to mention another fun little hiccup like this. So of course it's Windows, so you have to use the Edge browser. I always use the native browser. That's just my rule of thumb.
Hmm.
Um, Oddly enough, I go, the Bing homepage has Bing Maps on it, and the very first thing I get is WebGL not supported.
Oh no.
Even though I, like a good VMware Fusion user, installed my drivers and tools. It's a really funny error, and I still don't fully understand it. But there was some weird incompatibility between WebGL
Hmm.
and the drivers for my Fusion, and I swear I don't fully understand it. Other than there's a flag you can go set. As you know, you can do like in Chrome colon / flags, edge flags. Uh, Search for WebGL. There's a checkbox, something like make WebGL work. If you want to enable make WebGL work,
I like
and then
that.
WebGL works.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like you don't think, oh, I don't need WebGL. I don't play video games on the internet, but every website uses WebGL. Like I'm saying,
Oh yeah.
Bing Maps, just for the weather map, was using WebGL. So you have to get those kinds of things working.
Yeah, that's nice. I think it's one of those developer quirks. A lot of people are asking me like, "Oh, are you using Windows or are you using Mac?" And like for
Mhm.
me, um, my plan is to mostly use Mac as much as I can. But there's gonna be tons of times where I need to be in Windows doing Windowsy things, building Windows apps, and like this for a developer setup, I think is really important. Which is
Yeah.
like the reason I can go to Mac because I can run Windows in there, and it's like runs really fast. It's like pretty good. And they say there's a lot of incompatibilities with the ARM stuff and other stuff, but like it works really good, in
Yeah.
general. Um, yeah,
And I
there
have to
is
say,
a
this is the first ARM Windows I've used,
no,
and bravo! I've had zero issues. It feels like Windows, runs like Windows, everything acts like Windows. I can't really even tell it's ARM Windows. It's Windows. So, as a first time ARM Windows user, yep, it's Windows. I can
yeah,
say that much.
it is definitely Windows. Yeah, it works really good. And I'll say this much because I've been using the reason for this is because I've been using a Windows ARM machine, my Project Volterra, for
Mhm.
almost 2 years. It was like a internal machine first, and then I got the final builds of it. And I went through all the beta testing of all the software, kind of getting up to speed on ARM on Windows. And nowadays, like I said, is my main driver, and I have really hardly any incompatibilities that go on with it. The biggest thing, obviously, and it wouldn't even work in this situation, would be like running the Android emulators, which on this mode would be nested virtualization, which wouldn't work anyways. Just plug in a device, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, but that's kind of been
It's
the
too bad
biggest
though.
thing in general. Or you could bridge the Android emulator that's running on your Mac as well. I've done that before. But besides that, yeah, I think the whole setup has gone really, really smooth. Yeah, and if you do Google like expanding VMware Fusion stuff, there is on Windows OS Hub, woshub.com. We're not sponsored by this website, but there are plenty of ads on this website. But there is an article. It's increase virtual disk VMware, and there is a section called extend a partition in a Windows virtual machine, and all these steps I did basically.
Wow. And I just want to report, because James has been feeding me these links. These are some nasty steps. I'm sorry if you have to go through this process. So, my recommendation, if you do have to slide the slider, slide it as far to the right as you can, because
Yeah,
these are some
exactly.
nasty steps you have to go through to get this. I've done this several times, and I don't remember it ever being this bad. So, I'm
Yeah,
curious how I got lucky.
yeah. I'm not sure either. It just happened to. I got it. I got it to work. This might not even be the actual one that I got. This might not be the
Well,
article.
I do want to say, just going with the dev thing. So, the elephant in the room, was it worth $3,000? This is kind of my question.
Da, 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 da.
It's 100,000,000% hard for me to answer that question, other than I'll answer it this way. For the first time since I got this Mac Mini a couple weeks ago, I opened up my M1 Air, which we rave about, favorite computer in the whole world,
Yeah.
and I had to do some development on it. And my God, it was slow. I had gotten very used to the M4 Pro, just cranking away through all my build files and just making my life very pleasant and very smooth. And you get used to the environment you're in, but it was nothing made me happier about my purchase than opening up my old laptop and doing development in it again. It's funny because I think if you listen to me on the podcast, I probably said I was perfectly content with my computer. I wasn't sure if I actually needed all this power, but I wanted to try all this power. Well, I'll say to past Frank, yes, you do need that power and you deserve that power. And why don't you get that power? And I did get that power and it was worth it.
Yeah, I'll say this much. Like, just booting up VS Code and like opening a Maui app, it loads really fast. And like if you close it and reopen, it's already there. Like it compared to either my Mac Mini, my Project Volterra, or my Surface laptop. Like obviously, it's those three machines combined, if not more than that. You know what I mean? Like the
Mhm.
power of it, and like everything is like loading so fast. Like the Solution Explorer, the C# Dev Kit, like it's running all the checks. Like it's just like do 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 do, right? And it's like, well, that's pretty impressive because I'm so used
Yeah.
to having to like open it, wait for it, restore
Yeah.
this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and
Those
it's
little
not bad. It's just
delays.
there's a lot of things happening, right? But this thing is cranking through it. You know what I mean? Because I just did it just to test it. And even that, like even this, right? I just literally open up VMware Fusion. I hit a button, and like Windows starts real quick. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I just did it right now, and it's up and running in under 10 seconds. Like a
Faster than
whole
your activity monitor.
it literally boots faster than my activity amount. No, I am literally in it already. I know it. I know, and I know, right? Like I mean, I'm doing a full shutdown of Windows, which means it's not
Okay.
like just
Yeah.
restoring an image, right?
You're
When I
not
shut
okay.
down,
Mhm.
I don't even snapshot it. Shut it. I shut it down.
All the
I
way.
don't know why. I shut it down.
That is weird.
It is very strange. I don't know
The
why I
best
do
part of the
that.
virtual machine is just closing the window and forgetting
Yes.
about it.
There's a big pause button. No, I shut it down, but like it's it's real snappy. You know what I mean? And like you said, even
Mhm.
inside that virtual environment, it's fairly snappy too. And like same thing with OBS doing all this stuff. Like it's not blinking at all, right? It's just like let's go.
Yeah.
And so much that here's the other thing I've been trying to do, Frank, is I've been saying, okay, well, I want to try to like juice the power of this, which like what a lot of people are used to doing is just running everything in the browser, right? Like I think
Mhm.
of like
Mhm.
email. For my
Sure.
entire life, it's just Gmail. Just go to gmail.com and I switch between accounts. And I'm like, hey, I'm going all in. Everything's in mail. I'm going to use the native app. I'm going to do the native stuff. I want it to be, native, right? I'm going to get all the native, terminal applications. I'm going to get the terminal all set up. I'm going to get, I'm going to see what else I'm using in the browser. And if there's a native app, I'm gonna get the native app.
Yeah.
I have all my
Mhm.
Word, I have all my Office suite, right? It's all there because I want to juice the power of it. And I don't want to just juice the power of like the browser, right? Like the native apps are gonna be juicier and faster. No, I don't know.
I don't think I've heard the word juice applied this way, but I think I agree with you.
Yeah,
I'll
juice
say
them, squeeze the juice out of it. Yeah. But I feel like that to me is one of the big benefits of big hardy desktop machines is like you
yeah.
throw all the apps at them, right? And I love the browser, I love the web, right? But there's
Mhm.
something about having a beautiful like native app where you can really juice the machine.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% agree. In fact, today we were playing, a friend of mine and I were playing with the HDR settings because he got the M4 Pro laptop, which just
Ooh,
has a ridiculously beautiful screen on it. And we haven't been talking about that, but those are stupidly bright. I forget the number,
yeah.
but like 1600 nits or something like that. And so, like, as programmers, like I haven't done HDR programming too much because I just
Mm,
haven't really had the machines that even supported it or anything like that. So HDR, by the way, I just want to make things bright. If you have a
yeah.
picture of the sun, it should blind you every time you look into that picture. Yeah, and these new computers, they almost can. You can go to YouTube and watch. I don't know, ridiculous HDR content and things like that. So we're learning how to program it and things like that. And you can program HDR content from web apps but it's really fun to program it from like the Apple APIs where you can really start to
Mm,
push it. You can use your 16-bit floating point formats and say, I need this to be 10,000 times brighter than that. It's not going to do it. It can't actually generate the sun in the back of the screen. Too bad. Someday, maybe next year. Um, but it's still fun to like just really abuse those native features and really like push the hardware to its limits, because well, in the case of HDR, 99.99% of apps don't take advantage of HDR because we
yeah.
never could. Therefore, apps don't. But we have this hardware. This hardware is capable of it, so it's fun to write the apps that can actually push the hardware and actually force it to make the pixels nice and bright and burn your eyes out.
Yeah, I totally did the same thing after I plugged in the DisplayPort cable. I
Hmm.
popped onto the 100 hertz and then
Yeah.
checked that little high dynamic range toggle. Boom, it's on. My
Yeah.
monitor's like, I mean, this monitor has HDR, and
Cool.
I'm running HDR. I got Frank in HDR mode
You
right
got it.
now, and it's like,
Nice.
it makes a difference. I always like, so one thing I do on my Mac, on all my Macs, is the background, the wallpaper, if you will. I always leave it the default because they're really pretty, as all the sequoias are here. And those sequoias, the browns and the greens pop a lot more on it, which is cool. And it's not like my display is not like a very expensive display. It's not like a studio display, but it definitely does look very nice.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so it's fun taking advantage of all those features. And by the way, we might do a whole episode on HDR programming because my God, Apple makes it difficult.
Yeah, I would like to learn more about that because that would be pretty neat. Anything else, Frank? What's anything else you got? Any final pro Mac OS tips that I should be
Oh,
knowing? You told me
tips?
you told me terminal is amazing, and then I
I look. Okay, I don't even know. I let me say my piece on this one real quick. I've been using the terminal since I was a wee little lad in the '90s. I have no idea what the new age people are looking for in a terminal because
yeah.
the Mac terminal logs into a server, talks talks TTY to it, delivers the TTY responses to my visual retina things, and that, as far as I'm concerned, is what a terminal should do. So I have no idea what all my posh and your weird things. I have no idea what those are doing. I understand having a different shell. You should all use fish. I know you hate fish, um, but the terminal, it's talking network and interpreting TTY. Like, what's the big deal here? This stuff literally hasn't changed since the '70s.
Yeah, I guess the I term is just a shell, and it's just
No, it's
zish.
a terminal. It's nothing. It's not even a shell. A shell is the program you talk to. Bash and Z
Oh,
shell and fish. That's the shell. The terminal's the thing that
oh,
turns network bytes into pictures of words.
that's why they call it PowerShell. Because the shell.
It's a shell.
Wow.
You can run PowerShell in terminal. No big deal. Because a
Wow.
terminal just takes bytes and turns them into words.
That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, so there's a few things, for example. So if I CD into like GitHub right now and I go to like my Meisner app, like so I haven't set up on my Posh before, but Hanselman's always all about it and stuff. And
Okay.
like I mostly just use terminal, the Windows terminal, and like you can open a bunch of the shells inside of it. I usually just run
Yeah.
PowerShell and I have a bunch of other things like that. But I feel like uh there's some there's some integrations that just sort of I don't know, some things happen. But
Yeah.
in general, one of the nice things that you can do with like, oh my Posh, you just set it up and configure it with Brew, but it'll tell me like, the current time. It'll tell me like what folder
Oh,
I'm
sure.
in, like
Yeah.
up, and then it'll tell me the branch that I'm on. If there's any changes, it'll tell me the version of .NET that is configured on my machine and in that folder, and then it'll tell me how long the command took to
Hmm.
execute, basically. And then there's some PowerShell stuff that you can install, like a bunch of ligature and icon stuff. So if I type
Sure.
dir, for example, it'll show me like folders and little icons and different things that are in there, which is kind of nice.
Hmm.
So some more like again, I'm a more visual person, right?
Yeah.
So those shells are good. I need to look back at fish a little bit more as well, but um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
uh,
will say things like your prompt. Those have been configurable in every shell since the 1970s. Bash, Zish, Fish, they can all do that. No big deal. The cute little dir ls commands, those differ because on
Yeah.
Unix, ls is actually a program. On Windows, dir is a command within the shell. A slight
Yeah.
difference. Um, you can get better LSs and dirs, but yeah. Anyway, some of it's the shell, some of it's the terminal. I have no idea what people are doing these days. I just log into the computer like it's 1970.
I guess, yeah, it all works. It's all fine. I think I'm learning a lot more about like the Windows terminal does a lot of nice things because there's a lot of visual stuff that it gives you for configuration and settings and stuff. So I think I'm
Mhm.
learning like traditional terminal and shell stuff, or like I just learned that like when I type in, zish, or I type in pwsh, right? That's actually
Mhm.
running like a script that like boots PowerShell that like will configure a bunch of stuff. And I was like, oh, I didn't actually have any idea that that's how that worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like there's this magic script that it's running that you can like go and program basically to do what you want. I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm kind of learning these things where like I didn't really
Yeah.
have to before. Um, I guess I don't have to now,
It's the
but I'm like,
Unix world, baby. Yeah, it's
yeah,
different than the Windows world. The nice thing about the Unix world is it is ancient. So,
yeah,
if you want to read docs on it, you can pick up any old book from the 1970s from your library, and they'll tell you about current day Mac OS
no.
programming because it hasn't changed in 50 years.
I'll also say this much. One last thing. It's not a developer thing, but a good thing to do is I'm now all in on the Passwords app because one of our listeners told me that they do have codes in it. So they do have verification codes, the two-factor auth codes. There's a whole codes section. There is a gotcha with the codes, which is that you have to have a password set up and attach a code to a password.
Mm,
However, there are cases where you don't, like if you have a social auth, you may not have that. So you might have to set up like a fake password to like set up the codes. But I went all in on the passwords and I exported all of my passwords from my other password manager, which is like
wow.
Edge, and imported all of them. And then under the security little red thing that shows in your face, it's like
Yeah.
about 280 of these need to be addressed. Now,
Get on that, sir.
most of those were like duplications, or accounts that are no longer around. And sometimes it's duplication because like sometimes you log into a website and it's like account4.chase.com, like www2. What, you know what I mean? And like when the browsers are just adding everything all the time. So I spent a lot of time going through deleting tons of old, like I went through everything. Like there's just tons of websites that don't even exist anymore, like accounts that don't even exist, or
Wow.
some of
You
them
cleaned out.
I
I
cleaned,
wish I did that.
purged. I purged.
That's
I set
great,
up
man.
in my Google Authenticator app, you can export your codes as
Mm,
uh, QR codes. It's a very tedious process to go
okay.
through this. It's because you got to like open it, you got to screenshot, then you got to do it on your phone. It's a whole thing. Anyways, I imported all of them in there, but I'll say this much. One thing that I really love, and I know that like Windows Hello is like getting this all integrated as well, but having this with the little fingerprint button for passkeys, oh my God. Like it's just so great. Passkeys, like I'm
Mhm.
just logging in all over the place. You know
Ask
what
me
I
for a
mean?
password. I dare you. I can't wait to use my finger.
It just, yeah, I am the password. Like, boom. Passkeys, everything. I'm all in on passkeys. I've been using them all over the place for a while. Like normally I do the thing where you scan the QR code, it connects and it does all the stuff. But like, man, like when it's all just built in, it's like super duper nice. And if you are an Edge user, an Edge browser user, like I am, so I'm not a Safari user, I still refuse. Um, I'm an Edge user. There is a pass passwords extension, an
Oh,
iCloud's
cool.
password extension for Edge. They'll give you all the same stuff in Edge as well and save all your stuff. So that's all there. So it's just an extension that you can get, and it works great on Windows, on Mac, wherever Edge exists. It's all going to work. So boom.
I really appreciate those pro tips because I did not know that passwords did codes. So that's great. I will go through the tedious, painful process tonight, probably.
Yeah, I have like 40 codes,
Oh
and
gosh.
so what you end up having to do is when you go in, you scan it, and then it pops up a thing, and it'll try to be smart about it. It's like, oh, this is your X account. Like, do you just want to add it to the existing password that's in there? Cool. But a lot of it can't match one to one. The other problem is like each of the QR codes is 10 accounts. So it pops up, and instead of letting you configure all 10, as soon as you configure one, it goes away. I was like,
Oh,
come on, Apple. Now,
come
sometimes though,
on.
if you tap really fast and if it's suggested, it'll let you do multiple. And then sometimes just the
Pro
password
tip.
app crashes a lot. So like,
Oh my
it
gosh. Okay, I
feels like a
haven't had
beta.
that.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to set this up because there is password sharing with family members, and there's like some accounts that like it'd be good, for Heather to have and things
Yeah.
like that. But anyways, it's got all the Wi-Fi passwords in there. I mean, that's all great, Yeah. So,
I'm just
anyways,
happy I don't have to go
passwords.
to Safari to open the stupid passwords. That's all I'm happy about.
Like, that was my whole thing. Is like I had literally 5 different places where passwords were at. I said,
Yeah.
okay, let me just go all in. This is happening. Let's do it. So,
Sorry, one
uh,
password, but yeah, it's tough when the operating system has that feature.
yeah, exactly. Anyways, cool. That's my breakdown. Hour in. I'm, trying one, it's like trying to go all in on
Are you going to
Mac
keep it or
OS.
return it? I guess that's all I want to know.
Oh, no,
Keeping it?
I'm not. No. Well, I'm a little upset that Black Friday we could have got a $200 gift card,
Is
but
that right?
that's
Oh, that's how they get you.
how they get you. No, I'm, my other machine's over there. I need to plug it back in at some point and then like pull everything off of it and
Mhm.
do stuff. But all the cables are gone. I'm fully committed. I'm
Good.
locked and loaded. So
Yeah, it wasn't until today that I even opened my laptop. So I
yeah,
figure that's a success story. Like the
yeah.
transition was real smooth.
And the other thing I'm thinking too is it's like if I ever just want to be like, hey, I'm going to go all in on just like, oh, this is me. I'm going to be in Windows. Like all I got to do is open up VMware,
Full
maximize
screen
full
that puppy.
screen. I'm in.
You forget you're in a Mac actually.
Yeah.
Because when I get into Windows mode, I tend to work in batches. So I'll spend a week in Windows or a month in Windows, And
Yeah.
like you forget, or you like, so I set mine up so 4 fingers you can slide between the different desktops. And it's so fun to like slide between Windows, slide between Mac, and you forget what computer even is this. You're
Yeah.
just lost in operating systems.
That's totally true. I need to figure out, like, I need to figure out how to get over to the other screens. I don't have the trackpad, right? So I have the mouse.
Oh,
There's
you
some way to
gotta
do
you
it.
gotta do a hotkey or something because like quick switching between the desktops is where it's at.
Yeah. I just need to figure that out. I'll figure out the codes.
Pro tip: you
Yeah.
can do hot corners on Macs, so maybe you could configure one of your hot corners to do
Oh,
it. Yeah,
hot corner.
it's probably under accessibility where all the features are. I forget where they
Oh,
are,
probably. They're
but
all
you
today.
can configure your different four corners to do different actions on a
Oh,
Mac.
cool. Oh, that's nice. Uh, awesome. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for the podcast. I don't know.
What
What do
do
you
we
think,
call
Greg?
this one? Devon, Devon month one.
Yeah. 1 month with our Mac Mini for development review thingy. Cool. All right.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm definitely enjoying mine.
That's good so far. I'm excited. I just got a new wireless Xbox controller coming, so I can do some gaming on
Cool,
the
cool.
streaming stuff. So that's gonna be cool. And then yeah, I'm gonna redo the desk so it's all nice, lift stuff up and not tuck stuff away. It's gonna be really pretty. A lot of cable management already, so I'm excited for that. But yeah, besides that, I'm all good to go. So I'll take photos of it when all the stuff is here eventually. So it's good. And then
So
yeah, I
now
got
we
my
actually have to
camera.
get back to work. No excuses. No more installing. No more looking at progress bars. We actually have to work now.
I think it's actually a time to do stuff. I have some migrations to do. I have some upgrading to do to .NET 9, and it's full on right now. So that's my plan going forward. So, all right, that's going to do it for this week's Merge Conflict. Let us know if you have a Mac Mini, how it's been going for you. You can leave a comment on our YouTube. That's youtube.com/at Merge Conflict FM. It's there. You can go check it out. I should probably actually log into that account and see if we have any sweet comments. Oh, do I want to use a passkey? I do. Oh,
Always want to use a passkey.
although I think because I'm in Edge, I have to actually like scan the QR code still to sign in with it. Oh, man, maybe Safari's gonna win me over. But I think once I install Oh, I don't have the passkey on this one. I'll try another way. Set up a passkey. How do I do it? Anyways,
Well, the progress
um,
bars haven't ended, we've learned.
yeah. So besides that, yeah, let us know what you think. You can also leave a comment anywhere else on the internet. And definitely, if you haven't checked out last week's podcast with my colleague John Galloway, really cool story where he, you know, went into military. He was a submarine officer. He lived under the sea, was really fascinating. And his journey to become a software development and to where he's at in Microsoft now. So definitely check those out. Let us know what you think and how your Mac Mini journey is going, or if you decided to get a fancy MacBook Pro, I guess at this point. Yeah, let us know what you think and how your life's going. But that's gonna do it for now. So until next week, I'm James Montemagno.
And I'm Frank Kruger. Thanks for watching and listening.
Peace.